This is NDTV, and you're watching Classics.
It's only appropriate to begin telling the story of the Kirloskar family by first paying tribute to Shantanurao Kirloskar, or SLK as he was usually known, who was not only one of India's greatest industrialists, but a Renaissance man in the real sense. He saw the flaws of the economic route India had taken at a time when it was virtually heresy to criticize central planning and the public sector. And it was here, in Kirloskar Vadi, a little industrial township in the heart of rural Maharashtra, that the story of the Kirloskars begins. There have been other Indian industrialists who have criticized the socialist path India took after independence, but nobody did it quite so clearly as SLK. In 1981, at a time when economic liberalization was not even a blip on the horizon, he made a speech to the Madras Management Association in which he said economic planning was incompatible with democracy. In words that are ironically still true today, he said, "I believe that economic planning in India has made slaves of us all. I'm afraid the slavish mentality generated by planning over 30 years would prove to be the greatest stumbling block to our future economic progress."
He was exposed to America at a very young age. He had seen that economic model and he could see what a competitive economy could do for you. Then India was also not that different because there were no government controls till 1947. We did have the British, but the British were in a particular zone or in a particular economic area. They wanted everything to come from England. But that didn't stop you from having freer control. I mean, there were no controls on monetary instruments or on economic activity. You could do what you wanted.
SLK went to America in the 20s to study at what is still the greatest college of its kind in the world, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. It took him and his cousins 60 days to get from India to Boston, and he ended up making this improbable journey because his father, Laxmanrao, was something of a visionary himself. It was he who built Kirloskar Vadi.
My grandfather passed away in September of 1956. I was born in February of 1956. To say that I remember anything would be foolish, but yes, there was a moment when there were 4 generations. What I know about my great-grandfather is really from stories from my grandfather, my grandmother, and other people of that generation. And from whatever we've heard, it's that he was extremely a strong person. I mean, a person with views, who was extremely hot-tempered, who had, if he had a conviction of doing something, he just did it. And when he actually went to Kirloskarwadi, he was ejected out of Belgaum for doing, for starting a foundry in a residential area. And the king of Aundh, the Maharaja of Aundh, actually noticed him as an entrepreneur and said, "Why don't you come to my estate, choose some land?" So when they chose the land also, it was very interesting. It had a river close to it, it had a road close to it, and a railroad close to it. And in those days, the railroad was probably as important as an airport is today. And it was just a barren piece of land. So I think for 1910, when it was built, I think this man had tremendous vision in building a city or a township which was based on an American model, roads going north-south, east-west, closed water gutters, sewage gutters, piped water to the houses, and electricity on the road and in the houses. So much so that when my grandfather went to America in 1921, he called back, or he sent a telegram back saying that Kirloskar is probably more progressive than Boston is.
Another story which I'd heard from my grandfather was the fact that one journalist did ask him a question, that you went from this village called Kirloskarwadi to Boston. So what were the changes you found? So he said there was no running water, there was no electricity, there was no street lights in Boston. We had it in Kirloskar. This was in 1926.
At that time when he had gone there, my great-grandfather, I believe there was nothing there, literally nothing other than the railway station. Dharamshala where they stayed, it was just dry land. And for many years, they would, when there was no production, they would dig wells for water. And out of that, to create a company which has so many firsts to its credit. First time, forget the iron plow, which was made in Belgaum, but the centrifugal pump or the diesel engine or the electric motor or the machine tool. This was all done there for the first time in India, and it was in the middle of nowhere. He must have been really a great leader of people to inspire them to make things which were never made before in India.